Okay, let's try this again. I was literally live for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. The entire time, my mic was unplugged. I unplugged it the other day so I could charge my earbuds. Damn it. All right, so, damn, that sucks. And it sucks because the momentum I have kind of died down. But I'll see if I can restart this. um, Pick up the pace again. All right, so um, when I get out of work, I'm really exhausted. I'm really tired when I get home from work, and so I'll take a nap. Sometimes I'll sleep for a short while. Other times it's like a whole day's sleep. So when I got home from work today, I fell asleep, and then I woke up at 10:30 p.m. I thought it was the next day, so now I'm up, and but when I woke up, I was like compelled to talk about a spiritual awakening. I don't know why. I have no idea what I was dreaming about, but so here I am. All right. So one of the first things I started talking about was isolation. Well, no, feeling disconnected. Isolation was the next thing. Feeling disconnected from who you were. You feel it's almost a supernatural feeling in a way. You feel kind of detached from yourself. It's a very difficult thing to explain. It's really difficult to explain. It almost feels like you're hovering outside of yourself. Like you could feel a part of you. It's very difficult to understand it unless you're going through it. But you do start to feel detached from who you were once, like your former identity. You start to feel like you're having an identity crisis, actually, because nothing is makes sense. Nothing's making sense. Things that used to make sense doesn't make sense anymore. You start questioning. You start questioning everything about yourself, and that's one of the very first experiences, I feel like. You start to question your own belief systems. Things you used to believe in start to not make sense. So you question everything. And this process sort of puts you into a place of isolation. Because it's almost like you have so many questions, epiphanies, realizations. I mean, everything. It's almost like you crave, like a pregnant person craves certain foods. A person who is just starting their spiritual awakening craves knowledge, they crave information, crave understanding. And there's almost an obsession with it, because once it starts, once the spiritual awakening starts, it can't be stopped. You can't stop it. Once you start to awaken, there's no going back to sleep at all. You will never, ever, ever again see the world through the same lens that you once did. Never. Um, the thought of it can be scary, um, but the transition through it, the process through it, um, you don't think about. You don't really think about. You don't put too much fear, I guess, into. I want to say the unknown, but I don't know. Those thoughts are just leaving me. Excuse me. That's weird. But when you're in isolation, there's going to be people around you that don't understand it. They just can't understand why you need to spend so much time alone. And you start to feel detached from the people that you once never thought you would ever be away from. You just start to feel detached from them because there's no longer a resonance anymore, because when you start to see yourself on a deeper level, I think the the 3D or the physical life that once entertained you, kept you satisfied for whatever reason, I don't know, it just doesn't seem important anymore. It seems very surfaced, and you start to feel like you're missing a lot of things. And you start to feel like you're missing a lot of things, and you start to realize that there's so much more depth to everything around you, and you start to feel it. You really feel the depth of everything. And so when you start to isolate, you can experience and you will experience forms of depression for sure. And you may have people around you that take offense, that just don't understand. And there's a part of you that feels very lonely because it doesn't feel like anybody around you could possibly relate. And it's true. Unless they're going through it, there's no way they can relate to it. There's no way they can relate to it. And so that's what makes it a very personal journey. It's a very tumultuous journey, but it's also a very rewarding one. Eventually, you'll see. But there's usually an event or a series of events that sort of force you into this isolation and this sense of detachment from the things that you once viewed. Like, you could view things one way for a very long time, and then certain events will have you question those things. And so you start to take deeper looks into all your beliefs. So your belief system starts to change. And it's important during a spiritual awakening, because one of the important things on a spiritual journey is detachment. It's very difficult to detach from people, to understand the concept of detachment. can be difficult, because until you figure out what it truly means, you kind of have this dance with it, you know? So, detachment, what it really is your emotions for a person remain. You don't feel differently about people when you detach. A healthy detachment. You don't feel less love for them. The desire for them to be in your life doesn't change. It's your acceptance to what will be, will be. You truly find peace in that. And that's the art of detachment, is finding peace with allowing things to go, with allowing things to leave your life. There's peace in that. It doesn't change the heartache. It doesn't change your desire for them to be in your life. The thing that changes is your acceptance of it. True acceptance. I'm not talking about shoving down an emotion to ignore the circumstance. I mean being at true peace with whatever will be, will be. And I call that an art, because it really does take practice. You spend your entire life dependent on other people, whether it's physically, emotionally, financially, mentally, whatever. I mean, you spend your entire life. We're human. We were born attached to our moms. We had to attach ourselves to them because we needed it to survive, without depending on the mom or the caretaker, we would have died, because as a baby, you're defenseless. You don't know how to do anything, right? So you're born into attachment. And so your entire life, you're attached to something. There's something that everybody's attached to. And for some people, there's a lot of things that they're attached to. And for the people that are attached to more things, the transition will be a little bit more difficult. But it's so it's definitely an art, because you've got to learn how to do it. Like painting is an art. You're not born a famous painter. You've practiced. Sports, you've practiced. Dance, you've practiced. It's all an art. Self-expression is an art. And so, sorry. I always knew that there would be a day that I would talk about this, and share it and push it, and I knew that day was going to come. I just didn't know when, how, and there was no plan. And so I'm not really that organized. I'm not that organized with this. And I can get so far into finding examples that I can compare what I'm talking about that I end up losing the topic altogether, right? So detachment is an art. That's what I was saying. I forgot for a second. All right. Detachment is an art. Um, and the importance of detachment. Personally, I feel like one of the important reasons for detachment is finding your own identity, your true identity, who you are, learning yourself without the beliefs, feelings, ideas, ideologies, whatever, from other people, your own personal core and values. Um, but it also gives you freedom. It gives you freedom. Yeah, I don't know why I keep going blank. This is weird. Um, so, when you learn the art of detachment, right, you start to also learn during that who was truly important in your life. Not that these relationships weren't important, it's just who is serving your highest good. You start to really pay attention to the people who make you feel bad as opposed to the ones that make you feel good. Um, because you start to learn that your relationships with people serve their purpose. Like, you could have a relationship with a person that never really got deep. You never really got deep in conversation. The emotions never got deep, but they were a great distraction from everyday life. When you start to isolate and go within, that's no longer important to you anymore. And that person may get offended, but you're looking at it like it's not personal, but they take it personal. Other people absolutely take it personal, and it's not. And so sometimes you'll start to feel bad about it. You start to feel guilty, but you move past that. As and you tend to move past that kind of quickly. You can. I did. I did. That's my own personal experience. I moved past that kind of quickly because I just started looking at other people like you're selfish. It's not about you right now. It's about me. I need this space. And if you can't understand that, I don't know what to tell you, you know? So there's definitely going to be people around you that are going to be offended by that space. And they're just going to have to be offended because who knows? Maybe something will trigger them into awakening, right? There's always something that triggers you into an awakening. There's always a trigger point. And for everybody, it's different. And it never usually feels good. But it's on purpose because it's supposed to force you into a position where you do start questioning yourself and you do start isolating. Those are the first two very important things that'll happen. And you start to go through what we call in the spiritual community the dark night of the soul. Because you really start to go through this depression that it feels like you'll never get out of. You have an incredible weight in your chest that you feel. It feels like you have something inside of you that is dying to burst out. It's literally a physical feeling of something inside of you wanting to force itself out of you. And what that is And I didn't understand it at the time when I was going through it. And it took a couple of years for me to get through it because I didn't understand what it was. So hopefully this little bit of information will help you understand what it is and you don't have to go through that for as long. It's trapped energy. You have trapped energy from different lifetimes. And trapped energy definitely shows up physically. So that energy that's trying to burst out is really parts of yourself that's ready to be healed. Um, it's your soul trying to come alive, is what it is. It's your soul trying to come alive. It's your soul trying to break out of the density of the 3D matrix. That's why that inner tug, I suppose, feels intense sometimes. And it's meant to. Because although it feels like something is trying to burst out, the point of it is to pull you in. So weird, right? And that's what it's doing, because it'll start to gnaw at you until you look at it like, what the hell is this? And you pay attention to it, right? And so you will go through physical symptoms during a spiritual awakening as well. You'll definitely have, oh my God, the aches and pains. You'll feel really stiff neck, stiff back, joint pain, muscle spasms. You'll go through a lot of physical pain because you have a lot of trapped, dense energy in these parts of your body, which is why a lot of people in the spiritual community do yoga, because the different positions of yoga help to release that trapped energy. That's the point of yoga. And the aches and pains are literally storage centers in your body for old wounds, old traumas. They get stored. When they're not healed, they need a place to go. And so certain parts of your body will start to hold on to. It's survival. Your body is built to survive. And so your body's built to adapt. And so when you have old trauma that's never been addressed, it needs a place to go. And so, it's interesting. I mean, age, of course, the body breaking down, right, is normal. You get the normal wear and tear. The older you get, the more aches and pains you get, all that, right? But, when you're like in your 30s and 40s, I mean, it's kind of young to really feel broken down, It is. But you've spent your whole life of, from childhood up until that age, with many experiences, going through a lot of heartache, a lot of, uncomfortable shit. And so it gets trapped. When it doesn't get healed, it gets trapped. And so, a lot of people, like the science of fibromyalgia, it's interesting. I can really kind of compare this to that. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, God, years and years ago. But it affects your nervous system. But one of the key symptoms, one of the main symptoms with fibromyalgia is when you wake up in the morning, you're stiff. It feels like rigor mortis set in. You're so stiff. And you have to get up and stretch every part of your body. You have to stretch every part of your body because everything locks up. All your muscles kind of lock up. And once you stretch, you go about your day. Everything's fine. And so I kind of feel like this with trapped energy in the body. Yoga will help release trapped energy. So just like people with fibromyalgia waking up with stiff muscles, and scientists, they can't explain fibromyalgia. I can. It's trapped energy. I feel like that's what it is. Of course, there's a whole lot more symptoms. I mean, fibromyalgia the list goes on and on and on. It really is an interesting, I don't want to call it a disease, but whatever. It's interesting. But anyway, let me move on. So, another symptom that you might get during a spiritual awakening is very vivid dreams. Very, very vivid dreams. Some dreams you might have nightmares. And during a spiritual awakening, I think, especially in the beginning stages when you have the most vivid dreams, a dream journal would be a really good idea. Waking up and writing your dreams down. Because this is a solo journey, you do need a lifeline. And your dreams become more vivid because when you are asleep, you are at your least resistant period. And it's when your spirit guides can come in and communicate with you the loudest. And so sometimes your dreams will get heightened. They'll be incredibly vivid, almost real, and profound. There will be a very profound feeling to them, emotionally, whatever. They'll be profound. There's a part of you that's gonna understand. Like, there's a part of you that'll know that there was something in that for you that you need to understand. You may not know what it is, but you do understand that. And you're right. And so pay attention to that, because there is messages behind it. A lot of times, nightmares are meant to heal. And I have one very profound, very vivid, very real dream that scared the shit out of me in the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And I could not wake up from this dream until it was over. And even though it scared me at first, I was so relieved later. So it was literally a dream about good versus evil, heaven, hell sort of thing. And so in this dream, let me see if I can remember this. I remember the dream, but the sequence. So I don't remember how the dream started, so I'm just going to pick up at the point that I remember it. And at the point that I remember it, I was being whipped around a room. I was being whipped around a room. I was holding on to a broom handle. Don't know why. But there was something that was whipping me, tossing me around the room and hitting walls, smacking up against walls. My face into the wall. It just kept being slammed into walls, thrown around the room, the ceiling, the walls. But there was nothing there. It was definitely a demonic entity that was doing that to me. And I held on to the broomstick where the entity had the other end of the broomstick. I could have let it go and fell to the ground, but I didn't. I held onto this broomstick. And this demonic entity was holding the other end of the broomstick and slamming me up against the walls, like smacking me. But I never stopped fighting. I didn't give up. I didn't let go of that broomstick. I was determined in my dream that no matter what that entity was doing to me, I wasn't going to stop the fight. I was losing the battle, but I wasn't stopping the fight, if that makes sense, because I could have let go. And then finally, he dropped me and then came over to me, and I still couldn't see him, but slit both my wrists. And he slit both my wrists to the point where they were like bent and hanging on just by the skin. So it was like he almost cut my hands off. But it was so clean that if I held it up, you couldn't even see the line to it. It was just when I bent it back like this, it would split wide open. But there wasn't blood coming out. It was water. There was water pouring out of my wrists. And so I went, well, at first it was blood, but then water came pouring out. And I went over to the sink in the bathroom, and I was just holding my wrists over the sink because the water was pouring out. I mean, it was pouring out so much that I was afraid of it flooding the house. And I went over to the sink, and the water was pouring out of my wrists and over the sink, and it was still overflowing onto the floor. Hold on. It was incredibly emotional. And at first I didn't understand what the dream meant, what it was about. Had no clue. But it was one of those dreams that grabbed me. It grabbed me. Like, I really was so consumed with trying to understand what this was about. And I figured it out. I did figure it out. It was definitely a battle between light and dark. It was definitely spiritual warfare. And because I didn't let go and I didn't give up and I still took the beating, the water represented purity. It represented, now see, water is a very symbolic thing in spirituality, even in religion, which is what they use to baptize. It's supposed to purify. And that's what was happening. But it wasn't in a religious view. It was spiritual, but it was given to me through the dream like that, for that reason. It was like, I think because at the time, I really had this inner battle of, who I was. I was really looking at myself like I wasn't a good person. Like I was pretty selfish, actually. And on the surface, though, because that's not who I really was, And I don't know. I feel like there was a point where I just got to a point where I started forgiving myself for a lot of things, right? But I also feel like the water in that dream was, it was sort of like the darkness that was there, like the evil, I suppose. The density was being cleared out. That's what it felt like. It felt like my guides came in to do like a deep cleanse. That's what it felt like a deep cleanse. And water also represents the flow of emotion. And fear is an emotion. And I feel like by conquering certain fears, which is like what I did in the dream, because I've had a lot of dreams about demonic energies. I've had so many dreams about demons. My whole life I've had dreams about demons. Um, and so I feel like, but actually, after going through a spiritual awakening, I've had less dreams about demons. So, at some point you learn to embrace the dark, but the water represents purity. It represents the flow of emotion. It also represents um, waves, like the ocean, like waves, things come in, they crash on the surface and they recede back. And then they build up and they come in and they crash in again. And it kind of feels like that with a spiritual awakening too, So I feel like your dreams are going to be very important. Write your dreams down. Get a dream journal, write them down, and pay attention. Go deep, really try to break your dreams down and look at your dreams. They're metaphors, look at everything around you as a metaphor from this point forward. Everything has a meaning. um you so I'll move past that a little bit. Also, with a spiritual awakening, you have a heightened sense of intuition. Your intuition starts to definitely heighten. And it doesn't matter. You could have been like a very intuitive person your whole life. See, I think a lot of people get this confused too. See, I have been psychic my entire life. I was born that way. I was born seeing apparitions. I was born connected to the afterlife. I was born with that, but I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't touch it. I wanted no part of it, really. Especially after my experience when I was 18. I had a very scary experience when I was 18. And seeing apparitions is really creepy. And you're scared to talk about it. You don't tell anybody about it, But so being psychic and being spiritual, although they're connected, they're not the same. It's different. Because you can be very, very, very spiritual, go through a spiritual awakening and never have tapped in psychically your whole life. And then all of a sudden, excuse me, your intuition starts to increase. So you start to become more aware. What a good movie, and it doesn't matter if this is like your type of movie or not, but this is what I compare it to. I got infatuated with watching Twilight, that Twilight saga, that the whole thing, all the movies. I got fascinated with watching it. I mean, the storyline, of course, I love the storyline because I'm a hopeless romantic, but it was it was very similar, very familiar to me. Like I feel like that vampires transition into, going from human form into a vampire is very similar with a spiritual awakening, because when a vampire comes to life, once they transition from their human self into a vampire. Hey, Amber. I'm just talking about spiritual awakening. So, um, yeah, I'm too deep to recap. You can go back from the beginning, baby, but I'm too deep in it to recap. Um, But it reminds me of that, like a vampire. So when in the movie, because when they come to life, when they turn into the vampire, everything is heightened. Their sense of smell, their sense of like everything they see, it's almost like you wake up with brand new eyes. And this is after going through a pretty dark time. You will go through a dark time, but um, you do wake up sharp. Like everything feels sharp. Everything feels crisp. Colors are crisp. Um, I don't know how to explain it. Like you really feel connected. I can't tell you what I mean. I used to sit or lay in my backyard and just, I had a pool. Before I got rid of my pool, I would lay in my pool when nobody was out there. I would make sure that I was alone. But I would get in the floaty on the pool and I would just stare at the clouds. I would literally just stare in amazement because I saw the sky in a completely different way than I had ever viewed it my entire life. It was incredible. And so I used to watch the Twilight Saga because it reminded me of that. It really reminded me of that. And there was nobody else that I could talk to about it. I mean, I tried, but they just couldn't comprehend what I was saying. So it was the only thing that I could relate it to at the time. And so I got really obsessed with the Twilight movies. I still watch them from time to time now because actually, on a spiritual journey, you'll start to learn about a lot of different spiritual things. And one of the other things that I learned about during my spiritual awakening was the twin flame union. I wasn't really a big, huge believer on that, but I have my own personal experience to believe differently. But that movie reminds me of that as well. If you want to know what that experience is like, watch that movie. Truly. If you've never seen it. And if you have seen it, then you'll understand what I mean. Okay, so um, another thing is you have an increased awareness and sensitivity. You become more sensitive to things, emotions, sounds, how people react to you, how you react to others. You become more keenly aware of it. It matters to you more. It allows you to understand people at a deeper level, and this is where you start to release judgment on others, especially yourself, because you release judgment from yourself first, and that's usually during the isolation period. Um, but you also start to release it on others. Because when you go through that isolation period, you really are forced to sit in front of a mirror, the mirror of your soul, and really understand your life, where it's been, why it's where it's at, and your acceptance with that. And then you understand that everybody else had their own personal journey and their own personal experiences, and you may not have experienced it, but you have this humanness, this about you, and that has compassion and empathy. It really does heighten. And you start to feel more connected in that way. So it's interesting because you're learning to detach from people all while feeling more connected. It can be incredibly confusing to navigate. But like I said, that's that dance. It's sort of like this dance you do until you get closer and closer together, which also reminds me of the symbol yin and yang. It's like how they're two opposite, but they tessellate beautifully, right? They come together beautifully because you need that balance of dark versus light. You need it. You need that balance. And so there's that dance, right? And so you start to understand the humanness in others and you release judgment. That doesn't mean you allow others to treat you a certain way. No, actually, no. You actually have stronger, firmer boundaries because you don't want to experience what you've experienced before. You don't want to go through a whole healing process again. But it doesn't mean that you look at another person. You don't judge them. You still have your emotions. You still have your feelings. People still hurt you. People still anger you. People still make you happy and sad and all that. You still have your emotions. You just navigate things differently. It's almost like an intense maturity. It's a very intense maturity. I mean, you may have been the most mature person that you've known, and still you're not as mature as you could be. It's a very intense maturity. Another thing that happens during a spiritual awakening is you start really noticing a lot of synchronicities, a lot of number sequences, waking up in the middle of the night, especially during like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, spirit hours. They call it witching hours. But you start to pay attention more to synchronicities than the advice of others, because you're learning to navigate your inner compass. You're learning to, imagine you've been given this device with no instructions, right? But you've got to learn how to use it. And the best way to learn how to use it is to play with it, right? So during a spiritual awakening, you're sort of playing with yourself. You're learning synchronicities, understanding, what does 111 mean? Why do I keep seeing that? Every time I look up at the clock, it's 11:11 or 1:11. You start seeing synchronicities like that. You'll start seeing, if you're paying attention, randomly, animal synchronicities too. You could have, I'm trying to think of a good example. Horse. I'll use a horse. Let's say, it's been years since you've seen a horse, thought about a horse, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you're seeing an image of a horse here. And then the word horse there. And then you drive by a horse. And then somebody starts talking about a horse. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, you're like, why am I being surrounded by horses? These are your guides. They're trying to get your attention. So then if you take that time, you can Google this, look up the spiritual meaning of a horse. And more often than not, if that's the thing or animal that you've been seeing frequently, the spiritual meaning behind it will resonate with you on some level. And so your guides are giving you a map, and this is what forms the bond between you and your guides, because you start to see the messages that they're sending you. Sorry. It gets emotional. You start to realize you're really not crazy. And that there is something way bigger than you that loves you so intensely, so incredibly, that it's giving you a map that you can follow. As I'm saying this, they're ringing in my ear. It's very my experience with this was very personal and very emotional, because at the time, I've spent my whole life really, I was surrounded by people, but never felt really connected to anybody. I've had like best friends, and then came to realize that they didn't care about me nearly as much as I cared about them. It didn't stop the way I cared about them, but it was definitely a hit, to the chest, to the ego. It hurts, And so when you have something that's seeking you out because it cares about you even more than you thought you've ever cared about a single person. It's a humbling experience, and you truly realize that you're not alone, and that if you follow this, if you follow the synchronicities, unlike the people around you with their own hidden agendas, this is something you know that you can lean on and trust, and you follow it, and it will lead you always out of situations that you don't belong in anymore. It'll lead you more in your path and closer to your soul family, the people who line up with you, vibrate with you at a soul level. You share a soul, your core frequency matches, and there's, you just recognize people. You see them. You know your soul family when you meet them. You don't question it. You know it. You just know it. Now, they may not be aware of it, but you know it. And they may not be aware of it because they may themselves have not gone through a spiritual awakening. But another thing that you'll experience a lot of too is deja vu. Deja vu happens a lot. Kind of reminds me of Groundhog Day. But you'll experience deja vu a lot, where you feel like this has happened before. But I feel like the deja vu experiences, now we've always experienced that in our whole life, right? But there's an increase in that. Some people get an increase of it, some people don't. I think it just depends on how psychically connected you are, because deja vu is really a psychic experience. It's sort of like a quantum leap. It's sort of like you experiencing something before you actually experienced it. It shows you that there's no such thing as time and space. It's sort of like this. It's sort of like a quantum experience where you've done this before, and it's because there is an alternate reality, which makes, okay, so the reason why they, psychics can predict future events is because it's already happened in an alternate reality, and so when you experience deja vu, you're experiencing that alternate reality. It's sort of like you quantum leapt into that and came back, and it's sort of like, whoa, that's weird, it's what's happening, and it's to show you that there is no such thing as time. It's an illusion. Your experience here, the entire when you realize that your life here is like the Matrix, which is another good movie to watch while you go through a spiritual awakening. Alternate realities. Understanding that everything around you is an illusion. It's all an illusion. Because we create our own reality, nothing is real, It's sort of like there's no road in front of you until you take a step. The act of you putting your foot down built the road. So, there's every step you take, you're creating the solid space under you. Because if you look out in front of you, there's nothing. There's nothing. It's just dead space. So it's sort of like that. Another way that I think I can describe something is like the infinite things. Like, all right, so if you get a microscope and you take something and you put it under a microscope, it doesn't end there. Because if you could keep breaking these pieces down, let's say that thing that you're looking at in a microscope, you can extract that, remove whatever, and put that thing under a new microscope and dive down deeper into that. You will see that it just never ends, because what you look for will always be there. There is no end to it. It'll always be there. So there's no such thing as time and space. This is really, it's a very quantum experience. Yeah. And then you start to get, hold on, wait, let me back up a little bit, because I have this thing that I pulled up. Okay. Yeah, what it says here about deja vu, because I was giving you my own experience with it. But with deja vu, like the heightened sense of awareness, spiritual awareness. All right, it says that. Let me skip. Sorry. So the next thing is an enhanced creativity. Yeah, that's for sure. Because your consciousness expands, you see things, I don't know, you get a broader view of things. You see things at a deeper level, which sparks creativity, because it gets your gears grinding. You know, when you start to see things from a different perspective or in a deeper way, it really changes the way you think. And when you change the way you think, excuse me, it also changes your creative expression. And so you may find yourself writing more or having the desire to write. That was me. I felt this insatiable desire to write. I have an unlimited stack of notebooks. I don't know what it is. I mean, I can go into Walmart, the Dollar Tree, wherever, whoever sells stationery. For some reason, I'm always drawn. I have, you know, those plastic shoe boxes that they sell at the Dollar Tree. I have one full of pens. I have a box full of notebooks. And there is no organization to it. I'll grab a notebook, write in it, and put it away. Grab a whole different notebook, write in it, put it away. There's no organization. Nothing. I actually bought another book. I bought a journal, a hardcover journal, because I do a lot of automatic writing. So, and they're scattered. Oh my God, they're scattered through so many different notebooks. And so I bought a journal because what I was going to do was go and collect all of my channeled messages that I had for myself, because I date all of them. I always put a date on them. And I was going to go and collect them all, tear them out of the notebooks, and rewrite them verbatim, rewrite them in the hardcover notebook. So I have one, place for all my channelings. And I still intend to do that, but I just know it's going to be hours of work. But yeah, you start to get more creative. And so, if you like to paint, you know, you'll have this increased desire to paint. There's something about creative expression that becomes really important to you. And for me, what I figured out because I also like to paint. I I get lost in it. Um, it's sort of like a form of meditation for me. The painting itself, I don't give a shit about. I really don't. I mean, I could spend weeks on a painting and throw it away. It's not the painting. It has nothing to do with the painting at all. It has everything to do with how lost in thought that I get while I'm painting. I get so deep into thought, but it's not like the monkey mind, like, like all day every day, you got these random thoughts, these fleeting thoughts that just jumble up. No, not like that. It's sort of like I don't know, you just have these conversations in your head. They're deep conversations about life in your head. I don't know, you just start to think about things, certain things on deeper levels. And so I get lost in that. I really get lost in that while I'm painting. So I'll paint. Um, and so, that happens with people. So you'll find that the real enhanced creativity. So if you like music, you might find yourself getting lost in writing songs or, um, you know, picking up an instrument and getting lost in that. Same idea, different modality. Um, but yeah, it becomes like a just a way to express yourself. And it's also nurturing, especially in a world where you feel like not a single person can understand what you're going through. Um, it's soothing. Because I feel like without the creative expression, it'll feel like you're going crazy. It can really feel like you're going crazy because you understand you're keenly aware that there are changes happening within you. You just it's confusing at first, and there's really not many people that understand it and that you could talk to about it. And so you find different ways to express this. You do. I actually have one painting. I think I still held on to it. I'll have to find it because I did this a long time ago. It was years ago. Um, and I just picked up the brush and started painting. But by the end of it, it was interesting because it was an image of a woman standing outside with her hands and arms up, pointed to the sky. And I remember, I haven't seen the painting in a long time. And I don't even really think I showed many people because it's not a good painting. It's a shitty painting. It looks like shit. It looks like a 5-year-old did it. But that's what I'm saying. It's not how it came out. It was what was happening during, through it, and after. And I painted chakras up her body. Her hands were up in the air. She was alone. She was outside. There was a tree. It was nighttime. There was a moon. Um, but I remember at the very end how I ended this painting. How I end my paintings usually is with my signature, right? That's not how I ended this, although my name is on it. It's not how I ended it. How I ended it, and it's the only painting I've ever done that has this on it, was I wrote across the top, "Who am I? Who am I?" Because in that moment, I was really trying to figure it out. And painting became a very therapeutic practice for me. Yeah. Um, the other thing that happens is you start to get drawn to spiritual practices, whatever they may be. Some people get drawn to um, things like up in the ethers. I think when you're going through a spiritual awakening, you're more drawn to the ethereal part of it. Not to say that the earthly part of it isn't significant. Of course it is. Because we live on the planet. We live on Earth. So, of course, everything earthly is important. But there's people who practice paganism and like Wiccan practices. And to me, it's their way of connecting spiritually, but to the earth. A lot of people have the wrong idea about paganism and Wiccan practices. A lot of people look at that as like witchcraft and mean and dark and evil and all that. And it's not true. That's not true. Like the pentagram. People look at the pentagram as like one of the devil signs. That's not true either. Each point of the star represents an element and then the earth. And so that's the pagans' way of looking at it. And so there's a lot of people who have really talked down about people who practice Wiccan and pagan because they have their own rituals where, they're using fire, they're using herbs, they're using stones, they use water, they use everything that the earth provides in their spiritual practice. Other people look at this as magic, like witchcraft, like casting spells. It's not like that. It's just not like that. Although they do practice that on some level, that's not what it's about. And people who are really deep into their pagan and Wiccan practices don't even practice dark magic. It's these kitchen witches that are new into this that want to go practice dark magic, and they don't. It's ridiculous. Somebody came into the store, was it yesterday? And he was really confused because we have a bunch of jarred candles. Like we have a red candle, and there's 7-day candles. We have a red candle called Hex Removal. Then we have a green candle called the Money Spell. Then we have a black candle called the Dark Moon. Then we have a blue candle for healing. We have an orange candle for a road opener, and the yellow candle represents the happy home. And it's just like the list goes on, right? And so this guy brings a red candle to the counter, and it says Hex Removal on the candle. And it confused him because the candle's red. He goes, well, what color do I use if I'm trying to attract love? Because there's this woman that he's been really attracted to, and he's like, it's like he's I guess she's been playing hard to get or something. I don't know. And for the store, I'm telling him which one on the shelf that he should buy because I'm trying to upsell for the store, right? But in my mind, I'm like, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, And I'm trying to explain because he seems confused, So I finally was just like, all right, look, listen, it doesn't matter. It's all about the intention behind it. So, and I grabbed it because there was a piece of tape. I said, you could take this piece of tape, this piece of Scotch tape, tell this tape what you want it to do, the intention that you set into it, and then stick it to something and tell it to work. That's all magic is. It's the intention behind it. So people use tools to make their intention feel more tangible, more realistic. I said, so people attach a color to love. So they say red is the color of love, which is why he was confused, because he couldn't understand why this candle was a hex removal candle, but it was red. I said you can color the candle any color you want to. It's the intention that's set behind it. Your belief system is what makes the intention more powerful. So if you believe that you need a red candle to set this intention in order to make this work, then that's your belief. And that's what builds the energy in the intention. So people need things to, and so I just find it silly, because I'm like, you don't understand. You can go outside and get dirt, you know what I mean, if you're trying to set an intention. And so for me, I feel like magic in and of itself is a moot point. It just, I laugh because there's people that have actually tried to do their hoodoo on me, and I giggle because I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing. You really have no idea what it is and what you're doing, and all you're doing is setting an intention. And you know, if you want to put that much energy behind something, you should know what you're doing. But so there's really no difference between earthly spirituality and ethereal spirituality to me, because you're finding yourself. And that's the whole point of this. You're figuring out who you are. And if you feel like you have to connect to the earth in that way to figure out who you are, to expand your consciousness, then so be it. That's what you do. Me personally, I don't feel connected spiritually by connected to the earth. I feel connected spiritually by connecting to otherworldly things that are actually giving me signs and synchronicities. But I will say, if you are pagan or Wiccan and then you start going through a spiritual awakening, that idea might change. You may change from paganism into more angelic realm. You may not. But it's just everything. It's personal. It's personal to you. And that's the main point of this. It's personal to you. So the measuring stick held up to others, measuring where you're at in comparison to where somebody else is at on their journey, it's a moot point, because you'll get there. You will get there, and you can't rush it. And when you try to rush it, something will happen to grab you by the back of your shirt and pull you back. Truly. Okay. So, this might be the last one I go over, because there's quite a few, and I've been up here for a while. But there's a lot of symptoms. So I might pick up tomorrow, but we'll see. I'm going to go until I'm sick of it. The next one is living in the present. So when you start going through a spiritual awakening, you start to live in the moment. You worry less about the future, and you think less about the past. And again, there's a dance between the past and the future during that time. And at first you may have an increased worry about where your future is going, where you're heading. In the beginning, it might scare you because you don't know where you're going to end up. But at some point, when you release control, you just, what will be, will be. I mean, this becomes your reality. What will be, will be. You worry less about the future, because you start to truly understand it doesn't end here. You reincarnate. You understand this at a very deep level, not just the definition meaning of it. No, you really truly understand it at a very deep, deep level. That death, the end, the finality of your life here isn't really an ending. It's not. It's not. You pick up where you left off when you come back. Everything that you learned from a previous life, you've already known, which is why you have people, you ever see people around you that just act incredibly immature and you can't understand why? It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? you know? Why do you act like that? It's because they've just had less experiences here on the planet. Truly. They are a young soul, they're reckless. And so when they reincarnate, they'll pick up where they left off. So, when by their teenage years or whatever. You ever see some people? Here's another way to explain it. Sorry. Here's another way to explain it. You ever see like a kid that's 5 years old and you're like, God, that kid is so well behaved and so mature, and like you can't understand, like it's incredible, right? The maturity that comes off of some kids. And then you'll even hear people say they're an old soul. It's because it's true. They really are. They've been here so many times. They know how to behave. They know how to sit in his seat and not jump on it, Like they know how to do that. Whereas a young soul will come in buck wild. Now, that doesn't mean that if you come in as an old soul, you can still live a wild life, but there's a maturity about you where you know better. You're just making different decisions, you know what I mean? Whereas a young soul, they're coming in completely oblivious. And so when you learn this, you start to have more of an understanding for them. Not that you want them around you. You don't. You really don't want to be around it because it just doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like you've gone past that. But you understand it. It's like people in kindergarten cannot advance to the 5th grade. They just can't, and you understand that. All right, I'm over here though. So, you know what I mean? That's kind of where you're at. You're like, yeah, I just don't vibe with it. I don't know. But it's interesting. It's very interesting because you really do attract. It's like attracts like, right? And so you could be a very old soul, but living in a very low vibrational way. And that, oh, that is even more uncomfortable than a young soul living in a low vibrational way because they have no contrast. There's nothing to compare it to. So when you are an old soul living in a low vibrational and having a low vibrational experience, the inner turmoil is crazy because you have that contrast. You know what it feels like, or you just know better. So there's always that inner turmoil where you're just like you beat the shit out of yourself. You're like, what's wrong with you? You know better. Why are you doing that? You know. But and so you are comfortable before you go through a spiritual awakening. You're comfortable vibrating with low vibrational people because when you go through, oh gosh, this gets so crazy. So when you go through a spiritual awakening, right, there's aspects of yourself that you have to come to grips with. And so, and you realize that you're not who you've been. You're not that person, right? And when you come to this realization, it's I'm tripping over my words again. God damn it. This happens to me a lot. Shit. This is why I was gonna end it. When my mind gets tired, I start to stumble. Like I know what I want to say. I really know what I want to say. A lot of highly spiritual people who don't realize that they're spiritual. And I'm saying spiritual, and I shouldn't. I should say a lot of old souls who have been here a lot. They're tired. They're tired. And so, because you've done it before, you've been here before. And so you'll come back a really old soul when they're ready for like their last incarnations. Could be, let's say you have 2 more lifetimes here on this planet after this one. Or let's say this is your last lifetime here on this planet, for an old soul. You will probably face the most tumultuous life ever. I feel like there's so many people that are asleep that have not gone through a spiritual awakening right now, that are so connected to spirit and don't know. And they don't know it because maybe life has not been kind to them. And so they've shut down. They've shut down their heart. They've shut down intuition and shut down their inner guidance. And so everything emotional, they don't touch it. They don't look at it. It just, nope. If it's going to make feelings, if it's going to make me feel feelings, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to look at it. And it doesn't matter what the feelings are. They could be good. They could be bad. It just depends on the intensity of them. You know, and you just don't want to face it. So there's so many people that are highly connected, don't realize that they're highly connected because they're so emotional. Like they feel emotions at a deep level. And because life may have taught you that emotions are a weakness or something, whatever your reason to hide them is, or not deal with them or not face them, whatever. Some of the most connected and spiritual people will numb their emotions out through some means, you know, whether through anger even. You know, a lot of people just end up living life angry and seeing things from a really dark perspective. Other people will numb it out, not want to feel their emotions. Because, you know, it's easier, you know, let's say you pop a Xanax or something, you know what I mean? You can sleep through that day. And then, you know, sometimes the thought process is, if I do this every day, then I could just escape reality until the day I die. And then I don't have to deal with it anymore, you know? And I've gone through that. I've definitely gone through that. I spent many years growing up finding different ways to process my emotions, to numb them, process them, whatever. And I didn't know how because I was left to my own devices. As a child, it was as a child who, this is where I think I'll end this and pick up tomorrow. I'll just have to remember where I left off. I'll take a screenshot and circle it. Okay, hold on. I don't want to forget where I left off. Damn it, come on. Okay. All right, so, when I was younger, I had, my life was very different from everybody. I was very embarrassed about my life growing up. I did not tell a lot of people about my family growing up because I had a lot of very intrusive, demoralizing, a lot of very inappropriate experiences from a young age, a very young age. When you're born a spiritual person, you feel an intense love and loyalty toward your family, because that's the people you first connect with. And you're so oblivious to the world because it's brand new to you. You're a kid, like 4 or 5 years old. Everything is so new to you. And so your love is truly pure. The love that you feel for your family is truly pure. And you see everybody with pureness. So when they start doing things to you that's not pure, it'll fuck you up. It confuses you. And it's where you experience your very first heartbreak. And so a lot of spiritual people, a lot of people that came here, a lot of the foot soldiers, I'll call them, a lot of most people, my words keep coming out wrong, shit. The most connected to spirit, a lot of times, are people who have had an incredibly difficult upbringing. And they were left to their own devices a lot of times. Even if you're surrounded by people, you've been left to your own devices because you really couldn't trust your surroundings. And you learn at a really young age survival skills. You learn how to survive. I remember being 4 or 5 years old, knowing how to live, knowing how to survive. I knew that at a young age. Although I had a very nurturing mom, she was just oblivious to what was going on around her. She didn't know what was happening to us. She had a lot of her own stuff going on. But you learn at a very young age. What deceit is. What it's very difficult when you're a spiritual being, an empath, and you feel things at a much deeper level than other people. And at a young age, as a child, to feel the intensity of betrayal when you had a pure heart can be incredibly damaging, incredibly damaging. A kid's formative years before they're 5 years old. And so You learn survival skills. You learn how to survive the best way you know how. And, for me, I learned what true heartache was at a very young age because of that. And you spend a lifetime going through that. It almost becomes like, all right, here we go again. Like you get used to it, so you can get through it. You get used to it. People letting you down. And so at some point, you don't want to feel that anymore. And especially for females. And I think this may be true for males too. But I think especially for females, like for me, myself, it was true for me. I lost my virginity at 12 years old because I wanted so badly. I wanted so badly to feel genuinely loved. And the first person who told me that only people who love you do this, and if they don't do this, they don't love you. I was a kid, a very old man, a greaseball, taught me in his way what love was, and if nobody did this to you, they don't love you. And so I had a very construed idea of what love was. And so I was very angry and confused because I couldn't understand why the other people in my family weren't touching me like that. They must not have loved me, And so when I was 12, I wilded out. I lost my virginity at 12 years old and felt loved again. And so I put myself in a lot of scenarios where I was just giving myself to people, until I became a mom. When I turned 18, that stopped. Once I became a mom, that stopped. That stopped. I couldn't. Shortly after, I'll say, shortly after I became a mom, it stopped. Definitely before I was 20. Definitely before I was 20. But I was very promiscuous before that. Very much so. Because I didn't build myself a reputation. I'm not going to say that. I wasn't like that. But it was definitely coming from a place of just needing to feel connected, right? So I felt my emotions at such a deep level. I didn't know how to ground them. I didn't know how to handle them. And so I numbed them. I would numb them. I would detach myself from certain people, attach myself to other people, found really unhealthy ways to process and deal with all the things that were bothering me about life in general and why nothing worked out. And I was just running around crazy because I was just never, ever truly rooted and grounded within myself. My mom, I don't blame my mom. I don't blame my mom. Even though even though I've had my moments of abuse with my mom, I also understood that my mom grew up in a very abusive home. My mom literally had to fight for her life. Growing up, she was beaten badly. She was beaten very badly growing up. She didn't have any brothers or sisters. She didn't have a father. She just had her very incredibly abusive, psychotic, deranged mother. My mother had scars all over her body from stab wounds. My grandmother would stab my mother. My grandmother tried to kill my mother. And so I'm blessed. Even, she had the life that she did. She could have been so far worse than what she was. So I'm truly blessed that my mom was born with intelligence. It's my mom's intelligence that saved her, and it's also what saved me. Because my mom had moments, there were definite moments, especially when I was in the earlier stages of my life, wilding out. She didn't know how to handle it. She did not know how to handle that. Our relationship became strong when I was an adult and I moved past all of that. At some point, I came to my mom and I sat down with my mom and I opened up to my mom and I told her everything that I ever did to hurt her, lied to her about, and that I was truly, truly sorry. And it didn't matter to me when I did it. There were still plenty of things that I felt like she needed to apologize to me for, but I didn't care. I didn't care. I just wanted to fix the relationship with my mother. And she became my best friend after that. But before that, it was a decade. It was a whole decade that I didn't speak to my mom. And it was right before that period and during that decade, I really, if I could put it in my body and feel better, I did. I never got so bad to the point where I needed rehab. I was always able to remove myself from it, which is a blessing because I don't know how. I don't. I don't know how I was able to do that. Like when my daughter's father went to jail, I stopped doing cocaine. I don't know how, but I did. The only thing that's had a grip on me that's been really, really difficult is cigarettes. Everything else was easy for me. Cigarettes has been the thing. But the most spiritual people, the most connected, are the ones that go through this. They're the ones that it's like, because you're so sensitive, you're so empathic, you're so connected to your emotions, which is what connects you spiritually, because it's your inner compass, Your emotions is what guides you through life. If this doesn't feel good, you move yourself from it. If it feels good, you stay around it. So it's your emotions that guide you through life. And so when you're growing up and you're really connected spiritually and you have your guides really connected to you, you don't realize it, but you're over emotional. And then you start to look at that like a weakness. So you start to snuff it out and you lose your connection to your guides. You lose your connection to your angels. I mean, they're always connected to you, but you don't feel them and you don't see their guidance, and your life becomes this nightmare. And some people will die before they ever realize it. And some people will realize it and just change their life around. But that process is incredibly intense. It's incredibly deep. It's personal. It's heartbreaking. And at points, you just pray to God that you can run into one human being that can understand you and see you at your core, and accept you for that. Because you realize at some point, pouring yourself into some people is a huge fucking mistake. But you don't know. You don't know because you've been blind to it. And there's other people that you've poured yourself into that it wasn't a mistake. It just, for some reason or other, you're just attached, But could be for their growth, could be for your growth. Whatever. Everything is a lesson, though. And that's the whole point of a spiritual awakening, is to learn yourself on a core level, to learn that you are much bigger than you see yourself. Your human experience doesn't define you or your soul or the power of it. I don't like to use the word power. I really don't like that word. But I use it because it's used a lot in the spiritual community. I just don't feel comfortable with that word. I don't know. I don't like the word. But yeah. So I have a hard time organizing my thoughts. But if you understand what I'm saying, you understand what I'm saying. And if you don't, you're just not ready. But I'll pick up tomorrow where I left off here. I'm just starting to feel real fidgety and uncomfortable, and I don't know what to do with myself. So, all right. But I'll go till next time. I love you guys. And if you need to reach out for whatever reason, doesn't matter what. If you need help understanding certain things or need help processing or moving through this, it's okay to do that. For sure. Okay? Don't be afraid to do that. All right. Bye.